welcome back to another episode of Finklecast. Over the past week, I watched the entire Season 4, Volume 1 of Stranger Things, and I also watched the most recent episode of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, so those are the two things that we'll be focusing on today. First, we're going to start off with Stranger Things, and the only thing I can think to say is just, wow. They 100% exceeded all expectations. Now, I'll be honest, going into this past season, I wasn't too excited to watch it. It had been a couple years since the past season came out, season 3, and I just kind of grew distant from Stranger Things. I wasn't really interested in the show anymore. But then once I started watching it, I'm getting into the vibe again, and it was just so good. And for me, actually going in with such low expectations and just not really being too excited for the show made it so much better when it brought to the table such awesome content. It was absolutely wonderful. It's very rare nowadays to see a show that just keeps going further and further and getting better and better. The first season of the show was really good. A great opener to a series, and it's just nothing like it. The second season increasingly got better. Their story with Elle and how she's finding other people like her. And then in season 3, she's in the mix with her friends and they're battling this huge creature. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember the names of these things, but whatever they battled in the third season was insane. And this fourth season, they just went and did it. They topped it. They're bringing crazier things, bigger monsters, and it was just incredible. I just can't say it enough. Now, as usual, I can't go any further without talking about spoilers, so if you've gotten to this point in the episode and you don't want to hear spoilers for Stranger Things, stop now. So in this season, it takes 1 year after the third season, and Elle's in school with Will, Jonathan, and they live in Arizona, I believe. And then the rest of the gang lives in Hawkins still. Now, in the third season, you're supposed to think that Hopper is dead, but in the trailer, I believe they already spoiled this, so it's not a huge spoiler, but if not, if they didn't show in the trailer, I'm wrong. Hopper is still alive, and he was captured by the Russians, so he's in a Russian prison somewhere off the grid. And like every single season of Stranger Things, they start off slow, and they build into it, and leave you utterly confused. And that's what is so unique about this show, is that you'd have no clue what's going on. And I mean, I'm the kind of person that when I watch things, I try to predict what's going to happen. I try to figure out what's going to happen before it happens. And I'll be honest, with this show, I've rarely been able to do that. I've rarely been able to think, oh, this is what's going to happen, or this is what this guy is. And they just get you. And that's what's so cool, is that this series really makes you think, like, what is this? What's going on here? And same thing with the fourth season. First few episodes, you're just so confused on what's going on. And it wasn't until the exact last episode, maybe even a little bit of the sixth, that everything's tying in together, and there's no way you could have guessed what the ending was going to be. During the first few episodes, while Dustin, Mike, and Lucas are at high school in Hawkins, they introduced this Dungeons and Dragons club called Hellfire, and the leader of this club is Eddie Munson. Now, throughout this season, he is being accused for these murders that are happening, these gruesome murders throughout the Hawkins area of these teens. Now, of course, the first murder that occurs, you can obviously see it wasn't Eddie Munson because it happens next to him, and he is in shock, he is frightened, and he runs away. Throughout the seasons, they've added newer characters that aren't the original cast from the first season, and Eddie Munson was the newer character for this season, and he is the best addition to the show. He's hilarious, and he's a really cool character. And even though Eddie is a really cool addition, of course, Steve is my favorite character. I think he is hilarious. He's great. I love the chemistry that he has with Dustin, like that older little brother thing, and he's my favorite character. And of course, when Eleven has her powers, she is the best character in the show, hands down. But aside from her and her powers, Steve is still my favorite. There can be an argument made that Dustin might be my actual favorite, but it's like they take turns being my favorite characters throughout the show with how funny they are, how cool their development has been. I mean, in the beginning of the show, Steve was the bully. He was annoying. You didn't like him. And then that second season, he came back, and he was the hero you wanted to see in the show. In the first few episodes of this newer season, 11 is not fitting in at school. She's being bullied. She doesn't fit in. And then eventually she has an altercation with the bully at a roller skate rink. And she just bashes the girl's nose in with a skate, which I thought was hilarious. I mean, the bully deserved it, but, I guess violence is never the answer. But because this is a show and it is all fake and didn't actually happen, I can admit that I clapped very loudly when she did it. Soon after the altercation with the bully, she was arrested by the police and she was on her way to prison when government officials stopped the police car and took 11 away. Now, up until this point in the season, 11 has not had her powers. She is having some trouble, I guess a superhero power block, and she cannot use the powers in any way, shape, or form. She tried to use them against the bully a couple times and it didn't work, and it just kind of looked silly. But now with these government officials, one of them is this doctor that helped her go to Arizona into a safer location away from Hawkins, and he's trying to bring her back and letting her know that he's going to try to help her get her powers back. But she has to leave all of her friends behind. She can't go back with them. If she goes back with her friends, she can't go and get her powers back. And the reason why he's doing this is because he believes that Hawkins is in grave danger, which it has been since season 1. We just didn't know it yet. And then progressively throughout the season, just getting worse and worse. And he was telling her that she is the only savior for Hawkins. So naturally, we can't have a show with 11 not having her powers. So she left with the doctor. She went back to this secret bunker where there's a laboratory. And of course, the one and only Papa walks out and he is alive. And she struggles, she tries to run away, and then she remains at this laboratory. And of course, they shaved her head again. Big spoiler, but it was kind of annoying. And I don't know, it's kind of weird that they shaved her head. That's just a personal thing. It didn't really ruin the show for me. I was like, man, she's sitting out here trying to grow her hair, and they shave it again. Stupid. But throughout the rest of the season, she's working on getting her powers back, and she's in a little pool with a pod, kind of like a Star Wars back to tank kind of thing, and she's living through memories to try to access her powers again. While she's doing this, Robin, Steve, Eddie Munson, and Nancy are back in Hawkins, and they're trying to figure out what's going on with this big main creature that's attacking people from the Upside Down. Of course, Dustin and Lucas's sister is helping as well. And eventually, they end up going to the Upside Down. Robin, Steve, Nancy, and Eddie. They find a gate, and they realize that when this creature from the Upside Down attacks anybody in the real world, he is opening a gate in that location where he kills them. And they find one of the gates in a lake, they swim to it, and they are in the Upside Down. This is the most time they spent in the Upside Down with them walking around. Now, they brushed on it over the past few seasons, but they weren't actually in it, if I recall correctly. So they're walking around for most of the 7th episode, and it's really creepy, but a good creative kind of creepy. It was really cool seeing it. Then eventually, they go to Nancy's house in the Upside Down and realize, big spoiler, the Upside Down is about 3 to 4 years behind. And that was a big shock. Overall, this season was amazing. I'm going to have to say it's probably my favorite season so far. I cannot wait for the next 2 episodes that come out July 1st. I'm not going to talk about the end. I know I've been talking about spoilers, but I'm not just going to sit here and do the whole synopsis of the season. If you want to go watch it, I highly recommend, 10 out of 10, watch this season of Stranger Things. And if you have not ever watched Stranger Things, I definitely recommend giving the show a try. But I don't want to share the big spoiler at the end. It's something you have to experience firsthand. And if you actually really just don't care and you want to find the spoiler, I'm sure there are spoiler reviews out there of the ending of Stranger Things. Once again, I'm so impressed what they've done with this show. If you have heard my previous podcast episodes, you know that I'm just always looking for something that's just so different but so good and stands out. And Stranger Things is that series. I'm so excited for what they're going to do. And I heard that there's probably going to be a 5th season after the 2 episodes in July. I'm curious to see what happens and how they're going to do it. I feel like they might be able to wrap it up in the next 2 episodes, but it is only 2 episodes, so they might need that 5th season to wrap things up. But thankfully, it is such a good show that there really isn't anything I can look back on to complain about. There really isn't any plot holes in the story that I can think of that bothered me. None of the characters really bother me that much. The character of Mike can be a little bit of annoying, and obviously you could see that Mike, Will, Jonathan, and Jonathan's friend are the weakest links because they were just placed out there trying to go find Elle. The entire season, when Elle gets taken away, they're just trying to go find her again, and it was just kind of funny, but, it didn't do anything to ruin the show. But that concludes the chat about the Stranger Things season, and now on to the 3rd episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So far, I think this is my second favorite episode after the first episode, and an argument could be made that it might be my favorite episode. So far, it seems like Disney has a really good job at playing at people's heartstrings with nostalgia, and they're doing it pretty well. In this episode, Obi-Wan is still traveling with Leia, and they're trying to return back to Alderaan, and along the way, they will meet some adventures and some mishaps. Now, again, if you've reached this point in the episode and you do not want to hear spoilers for episode 3 of Kenobi, then stop now and come back later after you've seen the episode. This episode starts off with Obi-Wan on the freighter ship that they escaped on in episode 2, and he is trying to channel Qui-Gon Jinn. He's trying to speak to him still, and it seems like he's not having any success. But simultaneously, while he's doing that, they're going in between that scene and a scene where Anakin Skywalker, Hayden Christensen, is getting suited up as Darth Vader. They're putting on his arms, attaching his body to the legs, and then as they lower the helmet down on his head, you see Hayden Christensen as the bald and pale Darth Vader, and it was great. I love that they have Hayden Christensen in it, and I'll be honest, after watching the prequels, I wasn't a huge Anakin fan. He was really whiny for me, and I know that that's how he was written because he wants more, and the Jedi were holding him back, and that is true, even though he says it as a Sith. Because of how the character was played, it kind of bothered me. I just wasn't a huge fan of Anakin, but this whole build-up to the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and having seen interviews with Hayden Christensen, I've become more of a fan of Hayden Christensen. And obviously, it's all about nostalgia, too. I mean, I grew up with those movies, and now 17 years later, they're bringing them back to Star Wars. So I'm actually really excited. And when you saw Hayden Christensen's top half of his face, it was incredible. Now, during this scene, I feel like it is the first time we actually hear the Star Wars theme song. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there has not been any Star Wars soundtrack in this show so far. I mean, when we saw Darth Vader for the first time, there should have been the Imperial March. There should have been that Imperial sound, that Darth Vader soundtrack, and we haven't seen too much of that. I don't know if they just decided they just were going to throw out the window. I mean, they changed the soundtrack for Mandalorian and Boba Fett, but that's different. The Mandalorian is a brand new character they created from scratch, and Boba Fett is an original character, but they just decided to not go with the original soundtrack. Obi-Wan and Darth Vader is as original as you can get, so I'm not really understanding why they decided to not go with the original Star Wars theme song or something John Williams like. I could be wrong, but I thought I heard that John Williams was doing the soundtrack for the show. If he did, maybe they asked him to go a different route and to make things different, but I think it's because they have this TV show thing going on right now, and they want to spice things up and change the soundtrack, but I guess if they have a final battle at the end of this season, maybe they'll have the Duel of Fates soundtrack like they did in the trailer. It then switches to the scene of lava on Mustafar, and the camera pans up and you see Darth Vader's castle. What a sight. I think the last time we saw this was in Rogue One, and such a cool castle. But then they go inside, and Darth Vader is sitting on his throne and talking to Reva on the holocall. Don't judge me for not knowing that. But as they're discussing, Reva seems to be insinuating that Obi-Wan killed the Grand Inquisitor. Quickly, Darth Vader says, I do not care about the Grand Inquisitor. I only care about Kenobi and getting him and capturing him. So right off the bat, we realize that the Grand Inquisitor is suspected to be dead. That bothers me. I don't think he's actually dead. There are rumors that he was stabbed, like I said in the past episode, that maybe he was stabbed in his second stomach because that species has two stomachs. Maybe he's a clone. I hope in the next episode they clear all of that up, because if they leave it that he is dead, then they are ruining their own canon. Disney created that he died from Kanan Jarrus in Rebels. So if they kill him off, that's just odd. But nevertheless, I hope they clear it up in the next episode. It was fine that they left this episode to what they had in it, but I hope they don't leave that unanswered. Darth Vader also goes on to suggesting that he knows what Reva wants. And he said that if you complete this task of bringing me Kenobi, you will grant the title of Grand Inquisitor. So I think we're getting more answers of what she actually wants. She seems like she's trying to gain that status that we talked about, and she's trying to win favor within the Empire. And she wants that role of Grand Inquisitor. She's trying to just get higher and higher in the ranks. After Obi-Wan is trying to summon Qui-Gon and speak to him, and we see that Darth Vader's getting suited up, they eventually land on the planet where they're supposed to be meeting someone to help them escape to Alderaan. And while they are walking on this dirt path, he stops and he has this type of hallucination, and he sees this person with a cloak turn. And as the character turns, it is Hayden Christensen dressed up as Anakin Skywalker, or the Sith version of Anakin Skywalker. Again, nostalgia playing at your heartstrings. You can believe that I jumped out of my seat, paused the screen where Hayden Christensen was on, and I was freaking out. I was like, this is great. I'm loving it. And I'm hoping they're going to show Hayden Christensen as Anakin again, hopefully with flashbacks. I'm hoping either Obi-Wan. I'm thinking maybe Darth Vader might have some flashbacks as well. And I hope we get to see some Order 66 flashbacks or something like that. Now we cut back to Obi-Wan and Leia on that planet, and they're going to meet someone at a specific location in the desert who can help them get to Alderaan. Of course, there's no one there, and Obi-Wan feels that it was a lie, that no one was going to be there at all in the first place. And then Leia sees this transport coming down the road, and she goes, let's go. Maybe they can help us. And Obi-Wan's telling her to stop, and once again, Leia is just kind of like doing her own thing, running away, and everyone's just running after her. It's not a deal breaker for me, but they really made Leia, in my opinion, a little annoying. It's just kind of like she's just running the show, and we gotta like follow her wherever she's going. And it's not a big deal, but it was kind of annoying. So then they get on the transport. They notice there's an Imperial flag on the back of it. And as they go down the road, Obi-Wan's having a conversation with Leia about his family. And they're talking, having some kind of connection. And for the first time in all of Star Wars history, Obi-Wan is talking about his family before he was a Jedi and how he was taken away as a young child. And that he remembers that he used to have a brother when he was young. And that was very interesting because we've never really heard anything of Obi-Wan's personal life. The only thing that was really personal about Obi-Wan was Satine, his love interest in the Clone Wars. And then Maul ended up killing her, so that's that. Eventually the transport stops and it picks up a squad of stormtroopers. They get on and they're riding to a checkpoint. And while they're doing that, Obi-Wan almost spills the beans, and he's talking to Leia, and he calls her Leia. And when they got on this transport, they actually went under fake names, and he called her Luma. So they're riding, the stormtrooper just stops and says, what did you just call her? You called her Leia. And then he stops and says, that was her mother's name. So Obi-Wan bought himself just a little more time, but once they reached the checkpoint, the person who was driving the cargo ship got out and said, you might want to give these people a check. And then it all just goes to crap, and they're trying to search Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan pulls out his blaster, shoots a guy, and eventually takes out the whole checkpoint filled with stormtroopers. Eventually more stormtroopers show up along with an Imperial officer, and here we go, our savior, and the Imperial officer shoots the stormtroopers and takes Obi-Wan and Leia into town and into a safe house. While the Imperial officer who saved them takes them to the safe house, she said, "I arrived at the location and you had already gone." "Thanks, Leia. You took him away from the spot." Now, Obi-Wan did follow her. He could have just stayed there. But this is like the whole thing with this series so far. Wherever Leia goes, everyone's just going to go and follow. And she's 10 years old. She's not a leader yet. So, in this safe house, there are tons of writings on the wall. And they are written in some kind of language that you can't make out. But Obi-Wan reads something on the wall, and the name is Quinlan Vos, which is a Jedi that was in the Clone Wars series. I don't know too much about, only from what people have mentioned in other videos and stuff, but he is a fellow Jedi, and I'm curious to see if he will make a return in this show. He is another Jedi who is out in the galaxy, and he's helping people get to safety within this system and other systems. As Obi-Wan and Leia are about to escape through the tunnel to their escape point, Obi-Wan stops and the entire thing goes quiet. He walks to the front door of the safe house and he looks out and he can see Darth Vader at the end of the road. This is where it gets scary, but in a really awesome way. Darth Vader is starting to walk down the road and he's force lifting people by their throat. Someone runs out of a house, he snaps their neck. Someone is running down the road, he stops them, throws them to the ground, and while he's walking is just dragging them on the ground with the force. Very horror movie stuff, but it's very Darth Vader like, and it was great. He's trying to bring out Obi-Wan from hiding, maybe hoping that Obi-Wan will try to come and save them like a Jedi would, but Obi-Wan doesn't. He just kind of runs away. So then Obi-Wan is in an alley and he's looking to see if he can see Vader. And Darth Vader quick turns and Obi-Wan has already left. The person who saved Obi-Wan and Leia, the Imperial officer, is taking Leia to the ship to escape. Obi-Wan is now running in this very open, like dark area. Seems like maybe like a farm. And eventually you see the red lightsaber ignite and Darth Vader's there. Goosebumps all over. So exciting. So then Obi-Wan gets his lightsaber out, but he doesn't ignite it, and he just runs away. And it was really weird. It's like, why was he scared? Or I don't know. I think he's still viciously suffering from PTSD. He can't believe that Anakin is alive. He cannot believe that this is Darth Vader. He just was in shock. So then Vader closes his lightsaber, and then Obi-Wan is in the middle of this field or something. I'm not really sure where he's at. And then he hears a noise and ignites his lightsaber. And he's turning in circles, and he doesn't know where Vader's at. And then Vader comes up behind him and starts hitting his lightsaber against Obi-Wan's. And instantly, you can see that Obi-Wan is weak. He's not the Obi-Wan of old. He's not doing well. He's having a rough time, and Vader is just using one hand and pushing him around. Then there is this scene where Obi-Wan stops to look at Vader, and Obi-Wan says, "What have you become?" And Vader goes, "I am what you made me." What a perfect line. It was perfect. It was so good. And Obi-Wan is just, you can see in his face, he can't believe this is happening. Eventually, he force pushes him, and then Obi-Wan gets up and tries to run away. Then it cuts to a scene where Reva, using her force abilities, is easily able to track where Leia was and where the safe house was. And she goes in and she's reading all of these things on the wall, and then she sees the Jedi Order symbol written on the wall. And you can see in her face there's like conflict. She's upset, and maybe you're supposed to think that she might not be all bad. And if they do that, I could see it in a way where it could really redeem that character for me. So far, I haven't really enjoyed the character of Reva. It's not been my favorite. They've really made her just over ambitious, and the actor is playing the part very well. I think what they made her do was great, I guess. Whatever. To each their own, but she's not been my favorite character at all. And honestly, the Inquisitors are awesome. I like them in Rebels, but they've been really just one-dimensional this entire season so far. And now it's only 3 episodes, and we have 3 more, but they're just kind of blah and not really that great. but you can see that maybe she's going to have some kind of turnaround towards the end of this series. I don't know. The next scene, Leia is talking to the woman that helped them escape, and she tells the woman, I can make it on my own. Go, help Obi-Wan. So that woman sends Leia on her own. Stupid idea, but whatever. And the woman goes to save Obi-Wan. Now here is the best scene in this episode. Obi-Wan is running away. He reaches a dead end, and then he turns around as Vader is behind him. Vader stops, uses the Force on Obi-Wan, and lifts him in the air. Obi-Wan drops his lightsaber. Darth Vader uses the Force and drops down this crate filled with flammable rocks. Darth Vader leans down, ignites the flammable rocks with his lightsaber, and then Darth Vader says, now you will suffer, Obi-Wan. And then uses the Force and throws Obi-Wan into the flames and starts dragging Obi-Wan through the flames to him. And now we are mirroring the end of Revenge of the Sith. So as Anakin burned in lava, Obi-Wan is now burning in the flames. And it was just crazy. Obi-Wan is screaming, not to the extent of Anakin screaming in Revenge of the Sith, but he's still yelling and writhing in pain because, he's being burned alive. Darth Vader then puts out the flames, troopers show up behind him, and he says, bring him to me. And then the woman that left Leia on her own is now sitting on a cliff, and she shoots the one stormtrooper and then shoots the flammable rocks, and Obi-Wan escapes. Now here is the huge controversy. Darth Vader could have easily went and grabbed Obi-Wan. A droid only picked up Obi-Wan to walk away with him. So Darth Vader could have walked through the flames. Now, I know they're not using the comics in anything canon, and they're just kind of like to their thing of their own. But Darth Vader has, in his suit, has walked through the depths of a sea of lava. So people also saying maybe he's scared of fire. I don't think so. I think he's just playing with his food. And he's letting Obi-Wan go away and letting it prolong itself. Darth Vader in the history of Star Wars has let people just go away, and maybe he just enjoys the thrill of the chase, because in Empire Strikes Back, Luke Skywalker is running away and crawling away, and Darth Vader is doing that creepy just walk. In the horror movies, the person who's running away is always sprinting, and the villain is always just walking and seems to always catch up. So that's what it kind of seemed like, because there was no excuse. He could have used the Force and just doused the flames, and he didn't. We'll see what happens in the next 3 episodes. I hope they don't draw things out with the Grand Inquisitor. I hope they answer questions with that. But all in all, it was a pretty good episode. There isn't too much in this one that I had to complain about. I think most of the things that happened in the past 3 episodes are very small things that really haven't ruined it for me. I think we still have to wait to see what happens in the last 3 episodes for me to have a full opinion of whether it was just an annoying series or not. But so far, I'm enjoying Obi-Wan. Ewan McGregor is a great actor, and Obi-Wan is always my favorite. Now, I wasn't planning on doing an entire synopsis of the episode. I'm not always going to do that. It kind of helps me form my thoughts and to explain things better when I lay the backstory of what I'm trying to talk about. I'm super excited to see what they're going to do with the rest of the show. I hope it gets better and better as we go. Obviously, there has to be another battle at the end of this series between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. This was supposed to be like a small little scrap to show that Obi-Wan is not doing too hot. He's having PTSD. He hasn't used the Force or his lightsaber in 10 years. So it's going to be like a Rocky thing where Rocky Balboa is, gaining his strength back to have that final battle. Because in The New Hope, Darth Vader says, when we last met, I was but the learner, but now I am the master. So Obi-Wan has to kick Darth Vader's butt one more time before The New Hope. So at the end of this series, I feel like Obi-Wan's going to be full potential Obi-Wan, and he's going to kick Darth Vader's butt. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave down in the comments what you think about Stranger Things Season 4, Volume 1, and what you thought about the 3rd episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Thank you for listening and watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next Finklecast.